Reforming, the suitors threw again with all their strength, but Athena turned their shots, or all but two. One hit a doorpost in the hall, another stuck in the door's thick timbering. Still others rang on the stone wall, shivering hafts of ash. Amphimedon's point bloodied Telemachus's wrist, a superficial wound, and Ctesippus's long spear, passing over Eumaeus's shield, grazed his shoulder, hurtled on and fell. No matter. With Odysseus the great soldier, the wounded threw again, and Odysseus, raider of cities, struck Eurydamas down. Telemachus hit Amphimedon, and the swineherd shot killed Polybus. But Ctesippus, who had last evening thrown a cow's hoof at Odysseus, got the cowherd's heavy cast full in the chest, and dying heard him say, "You arrogant, joking bastard! Clown, will you, like a fool, and parade your wit? Leave jesting to the gods who do it better. This will repay your cow's foot courtesy to a great wanderer come home." The master of the black herds had answered Ctesippus. Odysseus, lunging at close quarters, put a spear through Agelaus, Damastor's son. Telemachus hit Leocritus from behind and pierced him, kidney to diaphragm. Speared off his feet, he fell face downward on the ground. At this moment, that unmanning thundercloud, the aegis, Athena's shield, took form aloft in the great hall, and the suitors, mad with fear at her great sign, stampeded like stung cattle by a river when the dread shimmering gadfly strikes in summer, in the flowering season, in the long-drawn days. After them the attackers wheeled, as terrible as falcons from eyries in the mountains, veering over and diving down, with talons wide unsheathed on flights of birds, who cower down the sky in shoots and bursts along the valley. But the pouncing falcons grip their prey, no frantic wing avails, and farmers love to watch those beaked hunters. So these now fell upon the suitors in that hall, turning to strike and strike again, while torn men moaned at death, and blood ran smoking over the whole floor. Now there was one who turned and threw himself at Odysseus's knees, Leodes, begging for his life. "Mercy, mercy on a suppliant, Odysseus. Never by word or act of mine, I swear, was any woman troubled here. I told the rest to put an end to it. They would not listen, would not keep their hands from brutishness, and now they are all dying like dogs for it. I had no part in what they did. My part was visionary, reading the smoke of sacrifice. Scruples go unrewarded if I die." The shrewd fighter frowned over him and said, "You were diviner to this crowd. How often you must have prayed my sweet day of return would never come, or not for years, and prayed to have my dear wife and beget children on her. No plea like yours could save you from this hard bed of death. Death it shall be." He picked up Agelaus's broadsword from where it lay, flung by the slain man, and gave Leodes' neck a lopping blow so that his head went down to mouth in dust. One more who had avoided furious death was the son of Terpis, Phemius the minstrel, singer by compulsion to the suitors. He stood now with his harp holy and clear in the wall's recess, under the window, wondering if he should flee that way to the courtyard altar, sanctuary of Zeus, the enclosure god. Thigh bones in hundreds had been offered there by Laertes and Odysseus. No, he thought. The more direct way would be best, to go humbly to his lord. But first, to save his murmuring instrument, he laid it down carefully between the wine bowl and a chair. Then he betook himself to Lord Odysseus, clung hard to his knees, and said, "Mercy, mercy on a suppliant, Odysseus. My gift is song for men and for the gods undying. My death will be remorse for you hereafter. No one taught me. Deep in my mind a god shaped all the various ways of life in song. And I am fit to make verse in your company as in the gods. Put aside lust for blood. Your own dear son Telemachus can tell you, never by my own will or for love did I feast here or sing amid the suitors. They were too strong, too many. They compelled me." Telemachus, in the elation of battle, heard him. He at once called to his father, "Wait! That one is innocent, don't hurt him. And we should let our herald live, Medon. He cared for me from boyhood. Where is he? Has he been killed already by Phalecius or by the swineherd? Else he got an arrow in that first gale of bowshots down the room." Now this came to the ears of prudent Medon under the chair where he had gone to earth, pulling a new flayed bull's hide over him. Quiet he lay while blinding death passed by. Now, heaving out from under, he scrambled for Telemachus's knees and said, "Here I am, dear prince, but rest your spear. Tell your great father not to see in me a suitor for the sword's edge, one of those who laughed at you and ruined his property." The lord of all the tricks of war surveyed this fugitive and smiled. He said, "Courage, my son has dug you out and saved you. Take it to heart and pass the word along. Fair dealing brings more profit in the end. Now leave this room. Go and sit down outdoors where there's no carnage in the court, you and the poet with his many voices, while I attend to certain chores inside." At this the two men stirred and picked their way to the door and out, and sat down at the altar, looking around with wincing eyes as though the sword's edge hovered still. And Odysseus looked around him, narrow-eyed, for any others who had lain hidden, while death's black fury passed. In blood and dust he saw that crowd all fallen, many and many slain. Think of a catch that fishermen haul into a half-moon bay in a fine mesh net from the white caps of the sea, how all are poured out on the sand in throes for the salt sea, twitching their cold lives away in Helios's fiery air. So lay the suitors, heaped on one another. Odysseus at length said to his son, "Go, tell old nurse I'll have a word with her. What's to be done now weighs on my mind." Telemachus knocked at the women's door and called, "Eurycleia, come out here! Move, old woman, you kept your eye on all our servant girls. Jump! My father is here and wants to see you." His call brought no reply. Only the doors were opened and she came. Telemachus led her forward. In the shadowy hall, full of dead men, she found his father, spattered and caked with blood like a mountain lion when he is gorged upon an ox, his kill, with hot blood glistening over his whole chest, smeared on his jaws, baleful and terrifying. Even so encrimsoned was Odysseus, up to his thighs and armpits. As she gazed, from all the corpses to the bloody man, she raised her head to cry over his triumph, but felt his grip upon her, checking her. Said the great soldier then, "Rejoice inwardly. No crowing aloud, old woman. To glory over slain men is no piety. Destiny and the gods' will vanquished these and their own hardness. They respected no one, good or bad, who came their way. For this and folly a bad end befell them. Your part is now to tell me of the women, those who dishonoured me, and the innocent." His own old nurse Eurycleia said, "I will then. Child, you know you'll have the truth from me. 50 all told they are, your female slaves, trained by your lady and myself in service, wool-carding, and the rest of it, and taught to be submissive. 12 went bad, flouting me, flouting Penelope too. Telemachus being barely grown, his mother would never let him rule the serving women. But you must let me go to her lighted rooms and tell her, some god sent her adrift of sleep." But in reply the great tactician said, "Not yet. Do not awake her. Tell those women who were the suitors' harlots to come here." She went back on this mission through his hall. Then he called Telemachus to his side and the two herdsmen. Sharply Odysseus said, "These dead must be disposed of first of all. Direct the women. Tables and chairs will be scrubbed with sponges, rinsed and rinsed again. When our great room is fresh and put in order, take them outside, these women, between the roundhouse and the palisade, and hack them with your sword blades till you cut the life out of them, and every thought of sweet Aphrodite under the rotting suitors when they lay down in secret." As he spoke, here came the women in a bunch, all wailing, soft tears on their cheeks. They fell to work, to lug the corpses out into the courtyard, under the gateway, propping one against the other as Odysseus ordered, for he himself stood over them. In fear, these women bore the cold weight of the dead. The next thing was to scrub off chairs and tables and rinse them down. Telemachus and the herdsmen scraped the packed earth floor with hoes, but made the women carry out all blood and mire. When the great room was cleaned up once again, at sword point they forced them out, between the roundhouse and the palisade, pell-mell, to huddle in that dead end without exit. Telemachus, who knew his mind, said curtly, "I would not give the clean death of a beast to trulls who made a mockery of my mother, and of me too, you sluts who lay with suitors." He tied one end of a hawser to a pillar and passed the other about the roundhouse top, taking the slack up so that no one's toes could touch the ground. They would be hung like doves or larks in springes, triggered in a thicket where the birds think to rest, a cruel nesting. So now in turn each woman thrust her head into a noose and swung, yanked high in air, to perish there most piteously. Their feet danced for a little, but not long. From storeroom to the court they brought Melanthius, chopped with swords to cut his nose and ears off, pulled off his genitals to feed the dogs, and raging hacked his hands and feet away. As their own hands and feet called for a washing, they went indoors to Odysseus again. Their work was done. He told Eurycleia, "Bring me brimstone and a brazier. medicinal fumes to purify my hall. Then tell Penelope to come and bring her maids. All servants round the house must be called in." His own old nurse, Eurycleia, replied, "Ay, surely that is well said, child. But let me find you a good clean shirt and cloak, and dress you. You must not wrap your shoulders' breadth again in rags in your own hall. That would be shameful." Odysseus answered, "Let me have the fire. The first thing is to purify this place." With no more chat, Eurycleia obeyed, and fetched out fire and brimstone. Cleansing fumes he sent through court and hall and storage chamber. Then the old woman hurried off again to the women's quarters to announce her news, and all the servants came now, bearing torches in twilight, crowding to embrace Odysseus, taking his hands to kiss, his head and shoulders, while he stood there, nodding to everyone, and overcome by longing and by tears.